So you want to make an ice age or a cold region. You know what that means. Tundra, taiga, evergreens, glaciers. In this video, I'll show you how to place your glaciers and all the accompanying features of the effects of Ice Age on maps. For more information on every specific feature, I've linked an Artifexian video about glacial landscapes in the cards. First though, what is an Ice Age? In the simplest terms, an ice age is any period with a drop of temperature resulting in ice sheets and alpine glaciers. For them sexy ski regions. It can be caused by many different other effects that I won't go into here, but you can look up some of this stuff if you want to know more. When the temperature drops, the polar ice sheets that your planet may or may not have will grow to take up more space, locking in CO2 and other greenhouse gases and only strengthening the effect. There's lots of reasons why you might want to world build an ice age for your planet. Ice sheets serve as great scientific proof of times past, and analyzing them can show some serious proof of different lifestyles, CO2 and oxygen levels in the atmosphere, and when oceans or large stretches of water freeze over, you can even see how warm or cold these ages were by how much plankton is locked inside the ice. But maybe you just need a snowy area in your world and you want to know what kinds of things ice ages leave behind on the mountains and the landscape. We'll get to that soon. 3 important things to know. I'll be talking about Arctic, tundra, and boreal or taiga landscapes, Arctic being perma-ice, tundra being permafrost and low biodiversity, and boreal being evergreen forests and long cold winters. Ice ages can be mild or intense, making your entire planet a snowball globe. I'll be talking about the milder variants because I need my climates for world building. And lastly, it'd be good to have a world map with degrees on it. Okay, let's go. First thing to note is that when the world cools, that also includes the waters and often the equator too. More snow reflects more light of the sun, causing less of the heat to remain in the atmosphere. As you can imagine, this isn't very good for the animals living there. Ice ages can come with complete or major extinction events if they appear rapidly, or with a large period of rapid evolution for the animals that do survive in the cold. Ice can form even down to the temperate zones of the planet, from the poles all the way to 25 north and south of the equator. Let's look at a map. This is a part of my world building project Nishi, which is Earth-like in dimensions and climates, but with slightly warmer tropics. You're looking at the Moraines region, which is in the east and at 75 degrees north of the equator. These are the perma-ice caps on my world at the current day, and sure enough, she's present. But at around 11 to 14,000 years ago, there was a relatively mild ice age, where the ice reached a lot further. This is Moraines 12,000 years ago, almost entirely covered in ice. As the planet slowly started to warm, the ice pulled back towards the poles to reveal much more of the land mass hidden beneath. This area in particular had many of the effects of glaciers that I want to illustrate to you all now. First of all, there's 2 types of ice sheets that we can determine, oceanic ice and continental ice. Continental ice sheets can be massive. Think of Antarctica, for example. Antarctica alone holds around 60% of all of Earth's fresh water, making up around 30 million cubic kilometers of ice. When it melts, it can rise the water level of the planet by, in extreme cases, several meters. I didn't illustrate that on this map, however, because my northern ice sheet isn't anywhere as big as Earth's, and much more of the melting water has been contained in giant, very deep lakes. But the water goes somewhere, so if you're making a colder, icier planet, your oceanic levels may go down and expose more of the continental shelf, allowing creatures to cross over places where the ocean kept them separate before. And if you're coming out of an ice age, the water levels may rise significantly and separate many of the previous connected landforms. You can often still see these land bridges on satellites though. To map the effects of the glacial period on your planet, First, determine how far the ice sheet really went. For me, that's all the way down here, but you can see that much of the ice stays on the land, covering much less of the water. That's because I have a warm Gulf Stream meeting the continent from the right that keeps that part of the ocean relatively ice-free. If you were to make a more local map, though, the ocean would still be quite littered with icebergs there. As the ice pulls back, it creates deep recesses in the surrounding landscape that can make for really interesting, striking views. One of the major effects of glaciers that last long through the ages is the grooves where the ice once sat, having slowly carved out the sediment beneath into very recognizable shapes. The first of which is this. Glacial valleys on continents are extremely recognizable because of their weird shapes. Glaciers leave behind what we call U-valleys, and many of them. They can range in size and depth depending on how big the glacier was that once covered it and how long it had to carve down the earth and stone beneath. Place your U-shaped valleys like this on your map. Where the glacier sat the longest, you get a valley that runs into a lake or all the way out to the ocean if possible, deeper than all the surrounding mountains or hills that it used to cover. The meltwater collects inward of the valley, making these recognizable grooves in the ground till the glacier has retreated entirely. So place those on the sides here and here, or for this smaller glacier here and here. They will roughly be the same in length and possibly depth if the land was covered in ice in the same amount of time and with similar ground, but can differ quite wildly if the ground gets softer in some places than others, or some parts were only carved out for half of the time the rest of the valley was. This depends on your planet. Remember that water always finds the most direct and easiest way down, so it won't go through a hill if there's some perfectly fine, soft, juicy loam right next to it. It takes the shortest route only if it's also the easiest route. The water from these side valleys will then collect into the middle of the valley and continue to carve that out more until you get this strange U-shaped valley. Place U-valleys anywhere where the glaciers remained for a significant amount of time, since that's what it takes to really carve them out. The next area you may want to place depending on your world is an area which I have here, which I called Icy Earth for clarity. This is an area where your ice have been broken apart, but may still litter the valley in large chunks that aren't really big enough to mention separately on a map, but will still show for the peoples and creatures that live there. I recommend placing them at the end of your glaciers in the current day. Next is water. The meltwater coming from glaciers can go through some serious reconstructing of the land. The main features here are lakes, fjords, and linked lakes, with of course also rivers in the mix. Your biggest, deepest lakes should be placed where the water collects before flowing towards the ocean. Sometimes water from these glaciers doesn't have the ability to reach the ocean, instead forming a static freshwater lake that evaporates inland and gets filled back up with mountain water from the melting glaciers. Whether or not the lakes can actually reach the ocean is up to you as the world builder, but I find it interesting to have a few of both. In the deepest parts of the U-valley sites, you might have smaller lakes that are linked or bigger lakes, again, depending on the time and the amount the glacier had to carve out the ground for such a basin. These lakes lead down to the main valley, collecting either all the way down or at the sides of the valley with waterfalls from the drop of elevation. Since the valley was carved out by the water, it will have larger collected lakes in the very deepest points that would be connected with rivers. Plateaus may also have lakes connected by waterfalls as well, as they go from one drop to the next. But if there's some deposits of dirt, stone, and other materials to obstruct the path of these ancient rivers, they may be diverted over time and now run the shortest route towards the sea or larger lakes. Some of these lakes, however, might be local and separated from the river chain if the glacier deposited enough sediment around it to keep the water landlocked. If the water from the glaciers form a lake that is connected to the ocean, it's called a fjord. Glacial lakes and fjords are often deeper than the surrounding ocean and may make for great places to set up your towns and cities. Where the glacier retreated may also have hilly crevasses in the land, however deep or undeep depending on your discretion. Remember, land elevation plus small lakes and rivers that flow towards the ocean and sediment-rich grounds that can make for really good soil for agriculture, depending on how warm or cold the area is. When you're done placing your water, you might want to continue to some of the other iconic features of glacial landmasses, like moraines, for example. Moraines are accumulations of sand, gravel, clayey materials, and nutrients that the melting water left behind, forming a very distinct dark belt in the landscape. Moraines are extremely noticeable even from the ground level because of the distinct color, so they might make for really good natural borders, along with the rivers that they might be paired with. Remember, as rivers have silt at the banks, glacial ice sheets have moraines very similarly. Place your moraines anywhere where the icy water would have deposited a lot of dirt and other goodies, so usually where the ice sheet remained for the longest stretches of time. And there you have how I made my map for my glacially affected area. As you can imagine, this makes for a pretty stunning view if you're down on the ground between all the hills, mountains, and waterfalls. So many of your planet's peoples may live near these freshwater lakes. Would you find me in this beautiful place freezing my tits off? Absolutely not. But next time I'll talk about the people who do live here, the adaptations many plants and animal species may take to thrive in these sorts of regions, and how your planet inhabitants may deal with the struggles of feeding themselves in these barren, cold lands. So if that sounds interesting to you, please remember to give the like button a gentle tap in the face and subscribe so you hopefully see next time I upload. You can also leave any questions or suggestions you may have in the comments. I'll do my best to answer any question I get. And thank you so much for watching. Bye bye!